Okay, so what I want to talk about today, again, and trying to be brief, is this is another sensitive subject for me. I feel like I have so many sensitive subjects because I hope I'm not being too redundant on it, but let's just say you haven't listened to me before. But feeling like I've rejected myself my entire life, it's like everything I talk about, they are my personal experiences. And so, let's get right to it. Okay, so I started to type up the notes for this episode basically and talking about selling out and crying, looking back on my career in aesthetics because it's really like penetrating my soul to think about trench as we've labeled it. It's like the trench I was in, but didn't really think it was a trench of thinking. And then I think you just go down the rabbit hole and like you're stuck and you just a very negative way of thinking. Like I can't even believe it went on for so long. I know for sure, it affected my career after year 4 and crying today, just briefly typing this up, is like, I think it just perpetuated the not feeling good enough people. Like, it's like your conscious mind knows, right? I knew I was good at what I did. I knew that there were things to improve, like with my personality or sales skills or whatever it was. So I knew that, but my subconscious did not believe I was worthy and or good at my job because I was comparing myself to my coworker. I'm not joking you people, probably like for 10 years. I was just in this loop of, again, I think it's basically just feeling again no sense of belonging and I don't fit in because I was always more into the self-care parts of it and the nurturing and holistic healing and assessing the body, especially when I discovered things going on in the face, and learning about how a lot of it was stemming from internal different things. And that I wasn't, and I'm not talking bad about anybody for anything, but things that I considered like that were superficial and focusing on our physical image. So whether that means, um, like, say, self tanning or plastic surgery, I wasn't in a clinical setting, but I'm just giving an example. Um, Doing eyebrows and all those things, I feel like I was making an excuse for it because of course, I care about my image to an extent and definitely hygiene and, eventually feeling like, looking pretty or doing things to look pretty was a good thing. But I think back then I had a lot of still negative thoughts around it and I couldn't really relate to that aspect in my industry. And while I was like, oh, aesthetics isn't really like hair. Like hair, I felt like was being more vain or makeup or whatever. Just the way that I looked at it. And again, from my upbringing, being into punk rock and about individualism and feeling like, being pretty and those sorts of things always win. It was like I was anti-pretty, if that makes sense. So it took me a really long to accept and allow myself even to like grow my hair long and like look feminine because again I was kind of against it. So before I get more sidetracked, the comparing myself, it's that she when you look at almost like I want to say, I don't know that it's an American model of what success means, but pretty much being booked all the time and weeks out, like I guess I associated it with success, right? It's steady. You must be good at what you do, or popular, or whatever it is in my mind, right? Only down the road to realize, I mean, in my industry, working 2 or 3 days a week, if that, you can make really good money, thousands of dollars, depending on what you are doing in services, right? Working as an independent contractor. So I think just that all that comparing is like it was so dumb because we had different audiences, you know? And so I looked at her business, comparing again to like what I was seeing out there as like, do I need to be more like her or do I need to? Because she was also a completely different personality. And like, I was like, do I need to act like that? Do I need to be like that in order to either get ahead or be successful? And I know that people can relate to listening to this. You don't have to be my industry to feel like this, you know, anybody, including first responders. You could compare yourself to your crew or just anybody out there. There's plenty of ways, you know. I feel like people could relate to this talk, which is why I'm bringing it up. So I think that the whole fueled the whole like I'm not good enough, like I'm not as busy as her. I'm not making as much as her. I'm not this and I'm not that because I am not willing to offer maybe to that sort of client. And like I said, we had totally two different types of personalities and clientele. If you want to say that they were high maintenance or whatever it is, I don't know. It's just a different. I'm not going to talk about like that on that in that level or degree or aspect. So during that time, it's amazing. I guess I didn't really journal on it. I don't even know what I would have journaled on it. I guess I just helped try to make myself feel better. I don't even know how I did that. Maybe I just had good and bad days, but mostly I just stayed in negative thinking. So that was way back then, 20 some years ago. And like I said, just like in a trench. And then I saw my business was changing and losing clients. That was probably, you know, whether they moved out of state or life adjustments, getting divorced, their income changed, whatever it was. Um, start my business started to change, and then I started questioning whether I was going to stay in it or not. So whether I was in that sort of negative thinking, and then on top of that just feeling like it's all just a popularity contest, like there's so much that kind of thinking going on, it really did like put me in a state of, look at it now, is just that was not a good thing. And again, the loop cycle of just the not fitting in and but never really like doing much about it. I don't know. I'm just sharing with you that um, we all have to learn in our own ways. And so I just want to share with you like I don't think that it was healthy for me. I think when if I had realized and seen how much the business was changing and also not necessarily in alignment with my what do you want to call it, my outlook regarding self-care, like maybe I should have been in a holistic spa instead of a salon. You know, maybe I should have just contemplated, you know, doing other things, like still doing that, but having a second job doing something else. Like, let alone, but then actually down the road, I never knew that, you know, holistic crystals and natural healing, all this stuff would actually become trendy. As I don't even know, as of the past maybe 5 years, it's 2024. So it wasn't, I mean, it was still about 20 years ago. Like it's come a long way. Um, So I'm here to encourage you all, whatever it is that you're in, like, don't feel like you have to sell out or give in. I think you may be tempted by it, right? Because again, those people are making what we might think is making more money, but actually, I think she actually discounted a lot of her services. I'm not sure why, and maybe that's why she was also doing it. Maybe she was accommodating, adapting to people or not charging what she felt she was worth. I don't know the different things and the different reasons, but um, I did feel like a lot of time at a lot of the time, like it was a popularity contrast, and the you are If you want to say fake or adapting yourself to please others and kiss their ass and stuff like that, like that's not me. So I did know that, but what I was seeing was always winning. And it was like our entire industry. It wasn't just her, it's just, yeah. So there were a lot of things. So, as far as advice and me just wanting to share with you, like, it makes me sad thinking about this kind of stuff, but I wanted to talk about it because I know how other people can feel, like, do I have to compromise myself in order to get where I want to be? And I think I'm just always going to go back to the whole, because of my industry, depending, it's still kind of looking like a luxury. So if it's something like my situation where the business has changed, I just have to accept I would just probably look for a second job. At one point, I feel like I was definitely able to rely on it as my main income, but I really didn't think forward as far as like what could change and just, you know, like I said, it is something that's for some people is considered a luxury and they can just cut it out of their lifestyle. So advice now is, I don't know that I would say get out of the industry if you're not feeling it. I don't think that that's necessary. I just think it's a good idea to offer many different options, and I could have learned many different skills, and there's a lot more thing I just would have had to be, I think, if I was in a different environment, because had I picked up other skills that were still kind of like, we'll just say, right, maybe some sort of East Indian hair scalp treatment. There is one, actually. And those sorts of things catering around that audience, I wouldn't have to necessarily, right, have to do eyelashes, self tanning, teeth whitening, all these other sorts of things, which like, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but because maybe it was in alignment with my soul and spirit, that wouldn't have been good for me, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean getting out of the industry. It just means redirecting myself in a different direction. And I think that's what's going on right now as well, and in terms of healing. And then another thing, regardless, because it happen in a holistic health center or a salon or whatever, if we're going to say this, talk about this, in comparing, everybody is unique, including personalities. So just know that, like, we're not a fit for everyone. And your technique and your personality and all those things, you can work on those things and developing your own uniqueness separate you from that other person. So instead of comparing yourself, just work on your arsenal. I like to call it that, your arsenal, and things you can put in your toolbox to help you stop comparing yourself. It's basically going back. You're not going to stop, but you're going to manage that thinking, right? It's the same thing about a physically attractive male or female, that we could, if every time we jump on our phones or our computer and we're checking these people out, that can force us to compare how we don't look like that or whatever it is that, we keep checking out, being obsessive about. So it's kind of the same thing that I feel like it took a really long time to learn. Okay, so I wanted to give that example and just sit on these couple of few things, and I am going to shut my mouth now because that was already a lot, and just sharing my testimony. Um, I like I said, I never have had written on this before, and I don't know why. So there was a lot of shoving down and a lot of brushing aside and thinking like this wasn't a big deal, which is probably why I made myself cry tonight, is because maybe I didn't, again, think it was a big deal. And I thought it was fine. And I thought, I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. And looking back now, how it really probably, wasn't good for me, not healthy for me. And I should have explored other options, maybe. So this last time around, depending on where I end up, I am going to definitely have a different experience now. So when it comes to, like I said, I got into an industry. I got into it because, well, at the recommendation of my stepmom and all that. I didn't know much about it. And I actually thought, isn't that something, people do on retreats or cruises and things like that? And I got into a salon and it went really well for a while. But most of my business was walk ins and it was eyebrows. So it really wasn't the nurturing very much. And eyebrows can be done in less than 15 minutes. But, it was a really good gig. I was booking a lot of my bookings were every 15 minutes. I feel like I was successful for a while. And then that business just changed in general overall. The place that I was in, which was great, they helped me out a lot, but their just business started to change, and that affected me and us. And then my coworker and I went off on our own, and that's where I said that it kind of continued in the next place. Still the comparing and things like that, even though her business changed as well. So I'm going to go ahead and end this right now, and I will see you next in the next video. I hope this provided some sort of value, and I don't know, maybe it helped you on some sort of level, and I will talk to you next time.